Live PST. In today's class, we are going to be talking about a lot of stuff, as we usually do, right? Now, just remember, Mondays are always just a little bit boring because Mondays are very heavy for us, right? We've got to do some grammar, and in the second class, we got to look at a ton of vocabulary and expressions. In our third class, I'm going to help you guys with your writing. So I'm going to hopefully provide a model, or at least part of a model, that will help you with your assignment today that's due on Wednesday. Anyhow, guys, so our topic for this week, though, is endangered species. Endangered. All right, so let's actually talk about that first. Endangered. So we got endangered, and then, of course, we're talking about species, right? But anyhow, endangered is the first word we really need to focus on, right? What does endangered mean? Well, if you just break it down and you think about how it sounds, endangered, in danger, right? What this means is that this specific species, whatever it is, this animal species, is in trouble. It means that if things continue as they are, this species is going to be completely wiped out, or basically they're all going to die, right? Now, one of the most famous examples of an endangered species that went completely extinct is the dodo bird. And I hope you guys know the dodo bird. And hi, Jian Kim, how are you doing today? Good to see you. So we got endangered species, which basically means almost dead, right? Or a very low number of these animals left. And then we have the word extinct, right? And extinct means 100% dead. Wow, this sounds like really, really dark, but basically that's what we're talking about this week, right? So around the world, of course, there are many endangered species. There are lots of different types of animal groups that are close to almost being completely wiped out, destroyed, or dead, right? And of course, there are lots of different extinct animal groups that are no longer with us because they have already been wiped out. And like I said before, the most famous example I can think of when it comes to extinct animal groups is the dodo bird. And the dodo bird, I can't remember exactly where it was from. I think somewhere off an island around Africa. The dodo bird was kind of a famous example because these birds were just kind of stupid. And unfortunately, when Europeans went to that island and encountered these birds, they found it was very easy to hunt them and then eat them because I guess they tasted really good. Well, everybody likes chicken, right? And I guess a dodo bird probably tasted like chicken. So they hunted and ate all the dodo birds until they were extinct. All right, guys, so maybe like Jian or anybody else watching right now, are you guys okay with the word endangered? And are you okay with the word extinct? Is that okay for you guys? Okay, well, no answer so far, so I'm going to assume that it's okay for you guys. But anyhow, yeah, that's our topic for this week. We're talking about, you know, endangered species and helping the planet, pollution, Earth Day, all this kind of stuff. So if you're kind of a green person, if you care about the environment, hopefully this week will be useful. And you know, whether you're in Canada, Korea, Japan, Brazil, etc., the environment is a very, very common topic these days, right? It's very common to talk about things like climate change, recycling, helping animals, etc. So I hope a lot of the stuff that you learned this week will help you to be better able to discuss these topics in English, right? But Of course, we have to start with grammar this morning, and our grammar topic is talking about using used to versus would. Because a lot of people get kind of confused about the difference between using used to and would. So we're going to explore this grammar topic in a little bit of detail. We actually have an exercise here, but we're going to get started with this sheet here first, guys. At the top of the sheet, it says used to versus would. And we're going to read over the examples here, and hopefully I will provide some more examples for you guys as well. Okay, guys, so here we go. It says both used to and would can be used to describe repeated actions in the past. Now, I'm sure more of you guys are probably used to using used to, right? Ooh, you see that? Ooh, very clever, right? I think a lot of you guys out there are probably already familiar with using used to. And when do we use used to, right? We use used to when we're talking about an action that we did repeatedly many times in the past. Let's say, for example, that, I don't know, in the past you played tennis. You played tennis for a couple of years. But now you don't play tennis. You could say, I used to play tennis, right? But you could also use would as well. You could say, now, when you use would, the one difference, though, between used to and would, actually there's more than one difference, but a major difference here is when you're using would, you should talk about when this happened, right? So you could say, when I was young, I would play tennis. And this would basically have the same meaning as I used to play tennis. Anyhow, guys, but let's keep reading here. It says, they are virtually interchangeable. They're basically interchangeable. It doesn't matter which one you use. But from the point of view of style, it could be argued that would is slightly more formal, more bookish, and can convey the idea that the speaker is reminiscing about the past. Okay, so this is important, guys. They're saying used to and would are basically interchangeable, right? Now, what they're saying there is that you don't have to worry about which one to use very much. Either one is usually appropriate and makes sense. However, when it comes to style, there is a difference, right? Basically, would is more formal, whereas used to is basically less formal or casual, right? Like used to is wearing a t-shirt and jeans, whereas would is wearing a tuxedo. You know what I'm saying, right? So used to, less formal, more casual, right? Whereas would is just more formal, kind of proper, right? Another way to put it is kind of think of used to as an American and think of would as a upper class British person. I think I'm going a little bit too far with that, but anyhow. It also kind of shows, when you're using would, it also kind of shows the idea that the speaker is reminiscing about the past. And reminiscing, to reminisce is a difficult verb, right? But the meaning of reminisce is like to really think about the past, right? Like usually in a positive way. Like maybe sometimes, let's say if you're living in Canada, maybe you're missing your mom and your mother's cooking, right? So sometimes you reminisce about your mom and your mom's cooking. You're like, yeah, my mom used to make really good kimchi jjigae, and it was so delicious. And she used this really sour kimchi. It is so good, and I can't find really sour kimchi in Canada, right? Like there's mat kimchi, but mat kimchi it's okay, but it's not so good, right? So yeah, in Canada we have this famous brand of kimchi called Matt's Kimchi. It comes from a farm owned by a guy named Matt. That's why I think they call it Matt Kimchi. I'm pretty sure anyhow. There might be another reason, or the name of Matt Kimchi might have a different idea, but I'm pretty sure it means Matt's Kimchi. And good for Matt, he makes okay kimchi. But anyhow, so guys, yeah, used to and would basically have the same meaning. They can be interchanged with each other. However, this is much more formal. So I think if you're trying to say something meaningful to somebody, it's better to use would. It's more formal, more proper. Used to is more casual, right? Anyhow, guys, reading further in the first part here, it says, it is often used in writing to talk about the past in a misty-eyed, sentimental way. When you're using would, it's more often used in writing, less in speaking, right? When you're speaking, you're more often going to use used to. Writing, probably better to use would, especially if you're writing a paper for university. You want to be more proper, you want to be more formal, use would. But not only that, when you're using would, it's kind of like you're talking about the past in a misty-eyed, sentimental way. So think about misty. Now you guys probably know mist. What is mist, right? Mist is like fog. You know, when you wake up early, maybe you live next to a river or, I don't know, the woods, some kind of forest, right? When you wake up very early in the morning, you can kind of see mist, like those kind of low-hanging clouds, right? I used to, well, in my hometown, it's a very, very rainy place. Actually, it's in the top 5 rainiest places in Canada, and I think in the world it's like in the top 20. Anyhow, so there's a lot of mist and fog in my hometown. Mist and fog are pretty similar. There's not a big difference. But if we say misty, this is the adjective. The weather is misty today, right? Or it's misty outside. And if you say misty-eyed, this has a completely different meaning, right? If you are misty-eyed, that means that your eyes have some, well, water or tears in them, right? Maybe you're telling a story about the past, a tragic story about the past, about maybe how you lost your dog, right? And maybe how your dog passed away. While telling that story, you might be misty-eyed, right? You might be tearing up a little bit because you're sad, right? You missed your dog Bubbles, right? And I miss Bubbles too. So maybe I'm going to get misty-eyed here in a second. But yeah, misty-eyed just means your eyes are starting to develop tears, right? And anyhow, it says about the past in a misty-eyed, sentimental way. All right, so those are the differences, guys. They're basically the same. They can be used interchangeably, but used to is less formal, more casual. And again, would, it's more formal, it's more proper. Used to, more commonly used when you're actually talking to people, when you're speaking. Would, more commonly used when you're writing something, especially maybe for a university or something formal, right? But another difference here is a stylistic difference, is when you're using would, you're trying to really show the listener or the person reading what you have written that you are reminiscing about the past in a sentimental way, right? Kind of in a sad way. And that's the main difference. All right, but there are more differences than that, actually, so we'll keep reading. Now, we have some examples here, right? When I was young, I used to go fishing. Okay, awesome. So when this person was younger, they went fishing, but maybe they don't do this anymore. I used to have a cat. So we can understand in the past this person had a cat, but they don't have a cat anymore. My grandfather would always smoke his pipe after dinner. Same kind of meaning. In the past, this person's grandfather would smoke a pipe, right? But this doesn't happen anymore. Maybe because the grandfather passed away, right? So I think one of the reasons why they're using would here instead of used to, because you could use used to, right? We could just have, my grandfather used to always smoke his pipe after dinner. And that is completely fine, right? However, I think the person who said this sentence here wants to convey a certain sense of reminiscing about the past, and maybe, of course, they have positive feelings about their grandfather. So it sounds a little bit sad. I think we would understand that this person's grandfather has passed away, right? Anyhow, after this, guys, we got people would get very angry when the tax collector came to town. Yeah, I would be angry too if the tax collector actually came to town in person and came to my house and collected taxes from me. Anyhow, this sentence here, we could also substitute in used to. We could also say here, people used to get very angry when the tax collector came to town. That would also be fine. But again, by using would, we are just making it more formal, more proper. Next one here, in those days, people would draw water from the village well. So they would get water from a village well. Now, well, not a very important word, but you might be thinking, what is a well? Well, a well is usually, well, of course, it's made by humans. It's basically like a big hole in the ground, and then people would put a bucket down and collect fresh water and then pull it back up. Anyhow, last one we have here is, when I was a child, I would wake up to the sounds of birds singing. Now, again, with this sentence, just like the other ones, we could use used to instead of would. When I was a child, I used to wake up to the sounds of birds singing. But again, from a stylistic standpoint, this person maybe wants to make what they're saying or writing sound more proper, more formal, so they're using would. But also, I think they want to show the listener or the reader that they are reminiscing about the past. They're really thinking about it a lot, right? This is probably a good memory for them, right? They used to wake up and they would hear the birds chirping. Wow. So in this case, they used would instead of used to. All right, guys. Now, another thing I should mention is for most Canadians and most Americans, when it comes to talking about things that we did in the past, like some kind of hobby or habit, something like that, to be honest, we use used to much more than we use would. However, just like this article says, when we are writing, we use would more often than used to. But let's look at some other cases. Let's move on to number 2. It says, neither used to nor would can be used to refer to single actions in the past. Okay, so this is a useful note here, because we know when we use used to and we use would, we are talking about repeated actions, actions that, happened more than once in the past. So we cannot use used to and we cannot use would if we're talking about a single action in the past, right? So it says here, for example, it would not be possible to use either form in this sentence. So look at the sentence. It says, in 1992, oh my God, that's a long time ago. Some of you guys are probably not even born yet. In 1992, I moved from London to Leeds. In this case, we cannot use used to and we cannot use would, right? We can't say, in 1992, I used to move from London to Leeds. Or in 1992, I would move from London to Leeds. Bam! Both of those are wrong. Now, the reason why they're wrong is because this action, moving from London to Leeds, maybe this person and their family, all of them moved from London to Leeds to live in Leeds, right? Leeds. Sounds like a nice place. Sounds very British. Leeds. We're going to Leeds. Anyhow, this is just one single action, right? Moving from London to Leeds. And therefore, we cannot use would or used to in a sentence. In this sentence, of course, you will just use the past tense. That's it. In 1992, I moved from London to Leeds. Bada bing, bada boom, done. So just remember, and that is an important point, used to and would, we only use them when we talk about habits or hobbies or things we did in the past repeatedly, right? More than once at least. Number 3, used to can also be used to describe past states with verbs such as be, have, and live. So for example, I used to live in France. He used to have a beard. Okay, this is another really important point. When using used to, you can combine it with verbs like be, have, and live. This is a certain state of being in the past. In this case, you cannot use would. So used to plus be verb, have, and live. But would, you cannot do this. It's not possible, right? I used to live in France. We cannot say, I would live in France. That would have a completely different meaning. Actually, that sentence is correct. I would live in France. But this is kind of a conditional sentence, and this is a different way of using would. The second one, I used to have a beard. I would have a beard. Kind of, but no, it doesn't really work. So used to can be combined with the be verb, have, or live to talk about a state of being in the past, but would, no. Okay, moving on to number 3, guys. Oh, sorry, not number 3, number 4. And on the back side, or on the other part of this page here, we have one more example. It says, this building used to be a hotel. Again, we cannot use would in this sentence. This building would be a hotel. Doesn't make any sense. But in the past, it used to be. At one point, it was, but we can understand now that it no longer is a hotel. Okay, but let's move on to 4. Would cannot normally be used in such sentences unless the state is repeated and qualified by an adverb such as often. Okay, so this is kind of what I was saying before. Would cannot usually be used with be, have, or live. This is not possible. But if the state is repeated, if it wasn't just one state of being, but a repeated state of being, and if it is qualified by an adverb, such as often, then it can be. But this will have kind of a different meaning. So let's take a look. When I was a student, I would often have a beard. Okay, now this is correct, but it says this suggests that the state was repeated several times over a period of years, but it is a highly restricted use of would. This is not commonly used. It does make sense, but the meaning of this, when I was a student, I would often have a beard. This means during this time period, when this person was a student, they would have a beard, they would shave it, then they would have a beard again, they would shave it, and they would have a beard again. So the action is being repeated. This action is not continuing. If, for example, okay, let's break this down. Let me erase the board, and we'll think about this in just a little bit more detail, because this one's kind of hard. So let me write down the original example here using would. When I was a student, I would often have a beard. Okay, so thinking about this sentence again, during this time period, when this person was a student, they would often have a beard. So this means repeatedly, during the time period where they were a student, they had a beard. But not the whole time. They would have a beard, then they would shave it, then maybe they decided again, okay, I'm going to have a beard again. They grew a beard again, they shaved it, and then they maybe decided one more time, hey, I'm going to have a beard again. And they had a beard, and that's it, right? It happened many times. So this does mean that the action was repeated. Okay, good. Now, think about the other example. I think that was on, okay, let's say this is 1, using would. 2, we'll use used to. When I was a student, I used to have a beard. Okay, now both sentences are correct, but they don't have the same meaning. This is one of the cases where used to and would are different. This is very rare, but they can be. So this is not the same, because this person is saying, when I was a student, I used to have a beard. This is a state of being, or basically kind of one action. So when this person was a student, they had a beard. Maybe it was just once, right? Whereas when you use would here, it means this action was repeated again and again. I know the difference here is kind of hard to see, but I think another thing you want to keep in mind is that when we're talking about the past and we're using would, this is not a common way to use would, and it is much more difficult because you have to quantify or qualify this sentence with an adverb of frequency like often. Anyhow, guys, okay, I know that's kind of hard to understand, but let's move on to the next one, number 5. Used to cannot be used to refer to specific restricted periods in the past, right? So that would mean like a specific month, a specific day, or even a specific year. Used to cannot be used in this case. So let's look here. In September 1991, I used to live in Paris. Okay, so after this it says, this sentence is incorrect and the past simple should be used. So in September 1991, I used to live in Paris is wrong. Instead, it should just be in September 1991, I lived in Paris, right? Now, one of the reasons why this is wrong here is because this is not a repeated action, right? It's not like in September they lived in Paris and then they moved away and then they came back and then they moved away and they came back during just this 1 month. It doesn't make sense, right? If you said in the past, I used to live in, I don't know, some other place, that would be okay. But we're talking about a specific restricted period of time, right? So if we thought of another example here, let's say on the 25th of March, I used to, I don't know, I used to eat watermelon. Yeah, that's a really kind of boring example. Anyhow, on the 25th of March, I used to eat watermelon. Bah, bah. No, this is wrong. Now, why is it wrong? It's wrong because we're talking about a restricted and specific period of time. Actually, I should have circled all this entire part here. Okay, the 25th of March is a specific date, a specific restricted period of time in the past, right? If we had just said, and just used the past simple tense, then it would be okay, right? On the 25th of March, I ate watermelon. That's completely fine. This is just something the person did on that day in the past. It makes sense. But using used to and eat watermelon, it doesn't make sense. It's like they ate watermelon many times on the 25th of March. No, it's wrong, right? And again, it's wrong because this is a specific and restricted period of time in the past. So The last note that they have here on our grammar sheet, guys, says, perhaps the best practical advice to the questioner is that used to is generally correct when referring to repeated actions in the past and to past states of being, whereas would is often inappropriate. Would, in this sense, is possibly best left to the written language. Okay, so actually that's a very good summary of the difference, right? Used to, you're going to use it when you're talking about something that you did in the past repeatedly, many different times, right? But also past states of being. Would can be used, but is sometimes kind of inappropriate. And in this sense, would, it's better to use this when writing than when speaking. Okay, but what we should do, guys, is go over a quick exercise that will hopefully help to make this a little bit clearer. So I want you guys to take a look at the exercise here. At the top, it just says used to and would, and it says in brackets here, exercises. Now, give me a second. I'm just going to erase the board. Now, also, this is very useful, but at the top here, they have a quick summary of how you can use used to and would. So take a quick look at that while I'm erasing the board here. But our quick summary, if we start on the top left, just says we use used to or would to talk about habits or situations in the past that are now finished. She used to like ice cream, but she doesn't now. Okay, we already knew that. We don't use used to or would when we say how long a situation or habit in the past continued. We use the past simple. And wore the same black coat for 3 years. Wow, Anne should really change her coat. We don't use would with state verbs. We use used to. My mother used to be a teacher, not my mother would be a teacher. That wouldn't make any sense. Actually, it would, but in a very different sense. Never use, or never used to, and would never are common negative forms. Sam never used to go to the kindergarten. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about negative forms either, so that's useful. If we stress the word would, it would mean that we found the habit annoying. Ted would go out rather than do his homework. No, Ted, he should have done his homework. Okay, guys, but we have some exercises here. Let's take a look at the first one. In number 1, it says, replace used to with would in these sentences where possible. Okay, so look at the sentence and think, can you replace used to with would here, or is this not possible? Let's take a look together. So number 1, as a student, Peter used to work on a farm every summer. Okay. Now, is it possible to use would here? Now remember, used to and would are both referring to repeated actions in the past, right? Actions that occurred more than once. So in this case, does it make sense? As a student, right, when he was a student. Now, when he was a student, that could have been, people are students for years and years, right? Peter used to work on a farm every summer. So more than one summer. So it is a repeated action. And in this case, yes, would and used to are interchangeable, so we can use would here. So if we said, as a student, Peter would work on a farm every summer, ding, 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 it's completely fine. All right, so yes, we can use would there. Okay, let's take a look at the second one. Number 2, we used to live in Oxford in the 1980s. Okay, think about this one. We got used to. We used to live in Oxford in the 1980s. Now, actually, this is not a repeated action. This is a state of being. And remember, used to can be combined with be verb, have, and also lived, right? Okay, anyhow, sorry, something popped up. I was taking a look at it. Anyhow, with those states of being, we can use used to. But we cannot use would. So actually, number 2 is not possible. The sentence is already correct, right? So we don't need to change this. No change. Move on. Okay, number 3. Our cat used to be scared of our neighbor's dog. Our cat used to be scared of our neighbor's dog. So could we say our cat would be scared of our neighbor's dog? No. This case, again, no change. The sentence itself originally is correct, but we cannot substitute in would. And it's the same reason as number 2. Number 2 is a state of being, right? Number 3 is also a state of being. So remember, used to plus be verb, have, and live. But with would, you can't do it. So this is already correct. We can't do anything about this. Okay, let's take a look at number 4. My sister used to go swimming every week. All right, so we know this is a repeated action in the past, right? In the past, every week, this person's sister was going swimming, right? So good for them, staying healthy, right? But in this case, of course, would and used to can be used to refer to repeated actions in the past. So this one, yes, we can change it. We could change it to, my sister would go swimming every week, and that's fine. But again, using would here just makes it sound much more formal, something that maybe you'd want to write, but not to say in speaking. Okay. Anyhow, guys, number 5, most of the time your school used to beat our school at football. Most of the time your school used to beat our school at football. Okay, so think about this one again. In the past, somebody's school beat another person's school many times in the past. So could we substitute in would? Is this a repeated action in the past? Yes, it is a repeated action in the past. And that's why we can use would here as well. So we could have here, most of the time your school would beat our school at football, and it's correct. But again, it's very formal, right? Let's take a look at number 6. Jane's just had a message from someone she used to know at primary school. Okay, so Jane received a message from this person. Yeah. This one here. This one's a little bit tricky. Jane just had a message from someone she used to know at primary school. Jane's just had a message. Oh, this is really weird. This is really British. Jane's just had a message from someone she would know at primary school. This one, no, we cannot use would here. This one, it's harder to explain why we cannot. But the reason why we can't is because this is an action and kind of an action that just occurred once. She only received the message once from this person. So in this case, actually, it's okay to use used to. Jane's just had a message from someone she used to know. She used to know this person. This was a state of being. She knew this person in the past. It just happened once. In this case, we can use used to, but we cannot use would because it's just one state of being in the past, of knowing this person. Now, that's a little bit confusing because before when we talked about states of being, we talked about be verb, have, and live. But in this case, it's none of those verbs being used. In this case, it's no. In this case, though, no is also combined with used to, and would cannot be when talking about the past. Anyhow, move on to number 7, guys. My parents used to take me to the theater once a month. This one is very easy. This is a repeated action in the past. Every month, they took this kid to the movie theater. It happened more than once. So yes, we can use would. My parents would take me to the theater once a month. Again, completely fine. Okay, all right, guys, so we're done with the first part. Let's take a look at number 2. In number 2 here, it says, choose the correct endings, A, B, or both. Okay, so let's take a look. Before getting his driving license, and that's really weird. That's very British. Remember, keep in mind that this is British. We would say driver's license in Canada or America. Anyhow, before getting his driver's license, Mark used to ride a bicycle everywhere, or Mark would ride a bicycle everywhere. Which one is correct? Is it A that's correct? Or is it B that's correct? Or are both correct? Let's think about it. So before getting his driver's license, Mark used to ride a bicycle everywhere. So he did this action many times in the past before receiving a driver's license. Or Mark would ride a bicycle everywhere. Again, he did this action many times in the past before he got his driver's license. So actually, in this case, both sentences are correct. Whether we use used to or would, it would have the same meaning. Mark rode his bicycle many times repeatedly in the past before he received his driver's license. So ding, 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 we're good. Let's move on to number 2. While he was at university, Sam used to spend 2 summers working in a cafe. Or B, Sam spent 2 summers working in a cafe. Which one here is correct, right? Okay, Sam used to spend 2 summers working in a cafe. Now, think about 2 summers. 2 summers sounds like a restricted and specific point in the past, right? And what did we say when we're talking about specific, restricted points of time in the past? We said you cannot use used to and you cannot use would, right? Because we're referring to this kind of specific and restricted period of time. So actually the correct answer here is B, spent 2 summers working in a cafe. So in this case, you're not using used to and you're not using would, you're just using the past simple tense. Okay, let's move on to 3. John Brown worked for the same company all his life. Or John Brown used to work for the same company all his life. Which one is correct? Now, this one here, again, this is a state of being in a certain way, right? John Brown worked for a long time. It's not a repeated action, right? And we know used to, we are usually using with a repeated action or a state of being with have, live, the be verb, or also know as well. But in this case, we're using the verb work. So, John Brown used to work for the same company all his life. Well, also we got all his life, which is again, kind of a specific restricted period of time. So actually the correct answer here is A. You would just use the past simple tense of the verb. Worked for the same company all his life, bada bing, bada boom, done. Let's move on to number 4. Mr. Smith sometimes got angry with his son because A, he would interrupt his phone calls, or B, he constantly interrupted his phone calls. Okay, I don't know why I find that funny, but A is okay, right? It makes sense. He would interrupt his phone calls. In the past, this happened repeatedly. Or B, he constantly interrupted his phone calls. This is also correct. They basically have the same meaning. So actually, both of these are correct here. Both are fine. Okay, moving on to 5. When Mary was a small girl, she never used to go dancing, or she didn't used to go dancing. Ooh, using the negative form here. Oh, what could it be? When Mary was a small girl, she never used to go dancing. There were many opportunities she had in which she did not go dancing, repeatedly, right? Or she didn't used to go dancing. It's just something she didn't do. Actually, both of these here are correct, right? Both are fine. What we can understand is that Mary had opportunities in the past to go dancing, but she didn't take them. She didn't go. But both are correct. Okay, number 6, guys. Centuries ago, people used to be a lot shorter than today. That's true, right? I think it's because of dairy products. That's why we're taller than our ancestors. Anyhow, B, would be a lot shorter than today. Centuries ago, people would be a lot shorter than today. Used to be a lot shorter today. Now remember, when it comes to a state of being, used to can be combined with the be verb, have, and live. But would cannot. And therefore, our answer is A and not B. Okay, now guys, I went over that kind of quickly, so let me write down the correct answer just in case you are not able to catch everything I said. So number 1 was both. Number 2 was just B. Number 3 was just A. Number 4, both. Number 5, both. And number 6 was just A. Okay. All right, but you're making pretty good progress. Let's move on to number 3, guys. We're going to run out of time in a couple of minutes here, but that's okay. We might, well, we may continue with this after the break, but we'll see what happens. Okay. Now, 3 here says correct sentences where necessary. So if the sentence is correct, you don't have to change it. But if you think there's something wrong, we can modify it. So let's take a look at number 3. First one. Did Sam used to work in a factory? In a factory? What am I saying? In a factory? I guess I'm a little bit tongue-tied this morning. Did Sam used to work in a factory? Is this correct, or should we change it, right? This is actually not correct. There's something small we need to change here. It should be, did Sam used to work in a factory? And question mark, right? Okay, so there is a minor difference here. And that minor difference is changing used to use, right? Okay, let's take a look at number 2. He's not used to wear suits. Ugh. But he does now. Ugh. This sentence, obviously, there's something wrong, right? We need to change this to the negative. He didn't used to wear suits. Oh, wait, sorry guys, that's very messy. But he does now. Okay, good. Let's take a look at number 3, and then I think we'll take a quick break here. Ted would have a nice house. Actually, okay, if we're talking about the past, no, this does not make any sense because, this is not a repeated action in the past. However, if we're talking about the other way of using would, it could work, but it's kind of weird. But we can say Ted used to have, right, a nice big house. Now, the reason why we can use used to here, but we cannot use would, is because we have here. Now remember, state of being in the past, you can use have, live, or the be verb, right? And sometimes no. But with would, you can't do that. So that's why used to can be used here, but not would. Anyhow, guys, let's take a break. We might continue a little bit further after the break with this exercise here, and then we'll move on to the vocab. Let's see how it goes. Have a good break. I'll see you again in about 10 minutes. PST. We're in our second class now. What I would like to do is continue with the used to and would exercises just for a little bit and then move on to vocab. All right, guys, so let's continue. We were on number 3. We finished the third one. Let's take a look at number 4. Okay, now number 4 here, this is kind of a tricky one. It says, Jill used to be a doctor for 20 years. Now, we remember, hopefully, that used to can be used with the be verb, have, live, and know, right? So actually, this is correct. We can keep this. It's totally fine. But we could change this as well to Jill was a doctor for 20 years. This is also correct, right? Now, I'm not changing this because the original sentence is wrong. I'm just changing it because this is another option, right? So Jill was a doctor for 20 years or Jill used to be a doctor for 20 years. Actually, both are totally fine. Let's take a look at number 5. We have, she would never return my phone calls. Okay, now, phone calls would be, that would be something that would occur many times in the past, right? And never return is totally fine to combine with would. So number 5 actually is just correct. You don't need to change this at all. You could say, for example, she used to never return, or she never used to, or she used to never return my phone calls. Both of those would also be correct, but it's not necessary to change. So that one is correct. We don't have to change it. Totally fine. Okay, guys, we got one more exercise here in number 4. It says, complete the sentences to suggest criticism using would and a verb given below. Okay, so remember, when you're using would to refer to a repeated action in the past, it can be used to emphasize that you were or somebody was annoyed by a certain repeated action in the past, right? You can use used to as well, but would really emphasizes the annoyance of the action. So we have things like leave, run, insist, and spend. So what we need to do is combine would plus one of these verbs here to make it make sense, basically. So we have number 1, Sam spent days trying to train his dog. But it blank blank off whenever they went out. Okay, so we have to guess what verb we should use here. We will have would plus a verb. What should it be? Off whenever they went out. So this boy Sam is trying to train his dog, but the dog would always do something off whenever they went out. Leave off, insist off, spend off whenever they went out. No, it doesn't make sense. But run off whenever they went out does make sense. So in our blank here, we should have Sam spent days trying to train his dog, but it would run off, right? Now, like I said before, we could use used to here. It used to run off whenever they went out. That would also be correct, but the reason why we're using would here is to emphasize annoyance or emphasize criticism, right? Number 2, the man blank his suitcases in the middle of the hall where people would trip over them. Okay, so this was annoying. The man put his suitcases there, people were tripping over it. So we're going to have, of course, would plus one of these 3 verbs here. The man would spend his suitcases. That doesn't make sense. The man would insist his suitcases. It doesn't make sense. We cannot use run. We already used it. So our answer is leave. The man would leave his suitcases in the middle of the hall where people would trip over them, right? So this is something that repeatedly happened in the past. So would is good plus leave. Again, we could use used to here. used to leave. But again, we're trying to emphasize annoyance, or that this action caused, it caused trouble, basically. Number 3, guys. It's obvious that Sally failed her end of year test. She blanked so much time doing nothing. Okay, so we got time. What do we usually do with time? Sometimes we spend time. So that's our verb here. So let's think about the blank. It's obvious that Sally failed her end of year test. She would spend so much time doing nothing. Poor Sally. She failed because she didn't try hard enough. Okay, let's move on to number 4. Dad warned Nick not to go to the forest alone, but he blanked on doing it. He would insist on doing it. So insist means you're kind of pushing for something, right? And this was annoying. He kept going into the forest, so he would insist. Again, you could use used to, but you want to emphasize or express annoyance, so we're using would. Okay, guys, so we are finally finished with all of our exercises here. I hope this makes the difference between would and used to a little bit clearer. I know that this stuff appears to be easy, but is a little bit harder than you think. What I think you need to keep in mind is that most of the time, used to and would are interchangeable, right? Either one can be used to talk about a repeated action in the past. However, you want to keep in mind a couple of small differences. First off, used to can be used with be, have, live, and know, right? It can be used with those verbs when you're talking about a state of being. That's okay. Would, can't. Another difference, though, number 2, would can be used to express annoyance. So a lot of times, used to and would are interchangeable, right? But if you want to really emphasize or express that something that was very annoying in the past, you're going to want to use would. In this case, you can also use used to. It's okay, but it's better to use would. Number 3, another smaller difference. Used to is more often used when speaking, right? It's casual, it's less formal. Would is more often used when writing because it's more proper, it's more formal. Again, it's okay to use either one when speaking, but we generally use used to much more than we use would when speaking, right? Now, another important point to remember here is this is using used to and would when we talk about the past. Keep in mind, though, that would can also be used to talk about things that are not just in the past, right? Would can be used when we're talking about conditionals, right? The second and the third conditional. If I were rich, I would buy a house, right? In this case, we're talking about an imaginary situation in which I was rich, I would do this thing, right? So remember, would is not just used when talking about repeated actions in the past. Would itself is very useful also in different circumstances. Okay, guys, bleh, right? I hope you guys understood the majority of that. I don't want you to worry too much about the difference. My main recommendation is when you're not sure, use used to, right? But let me erase this here. And now we're going to move on to vocabulary. Yay, vocabulary. So much fun. Now, remember, the topic for this week is the environment and endangered animals, right? So a lot of the vocab we're going to look at, a lot of it's going to be related to that topic. So let's take a look. And I want you guys to look at this sheet here. At the very top, it just says environment. And this is listed in alphabetical order. So we're going to be going over some of these terms here. We're not going to go over all of them because I just don't think it's a good use of time and it would take too long. But let's get started here, guys. This is probably going to spill into the third class. We'll see how it goes. The first one we have here is acid rain. What is acid rain? It sounds terrible, right? So acid rain is rain which contains large amounts of harmful chemicals as a result of burning substances such as coal and oil. Okay, so if you live in maybe an area, a city, that has a lot of manufacturing, a lot of factories, a lot of cars, a lot of coal-burning power plants, etc., it will create a lot of pollution. When this pollution goes into the air, it will get into the rain, and then it will become acid rain. So when I was growing up, my hometown is very, very far north in British Columbia. There's not a lot of pollution in my hometown. So when I was younger, I never thought about acid rain. And it rains a lot in my hometown, like I also said before, right? So, and my hometown has kind of a weird culture. Like, if you're a guy in my hometown, you but you should not use an umbrella when it's raining. This is seen as feminine or kind of weak. It is very stupid. But anyhow, after I grew up, I went to university, and then I wanted to go on a university exchange, and I had a Korean friend at the time, so I decided to study in Korea. So I went to Korea a long time ago, 2008, 2009. So I went to South Korea to study, and when I was there, the first month, it didn't rain, and I was really starting to miss the rain. I know that sounds weird, but it rains a lot in my hometown, so I kind of missed the rain. And I had a plan one day to meet my friend, and we were going to go to a restaurant or bar or something. And we were meeting at a subway station in Seoul. And it started raining outside. And it was time to go meet my friend, and I was kind of excited. I was like, oh, right, it's raining, awesome. So I went outside. Of course, I didn't have a rain jacket, and I didn't have an umbrella, because it's just something you don't do in my hometown. And I went outside, and I'm walking to meet my friend, and of course it's raining, it's getting all in my hair, but I don't mind, I kind of like it. And I meet my friend, and my friend's like, hey, where's your umbrella? And I was like, oh, I don't need one, I'm fine, right? And he's like, no, you idiot. This is acid rain. This will turn your hair white or cause you to go bald. And I was like, oh my God, really? So right after that, I bought an umbrella, and then since then, I use an umbrella when it's raining because I'm worried about acid rain damaging my hair. But in Vancouver, Vancouver doesn't make very much stuff, so I don't really think there's acid rain here, so I'm not too worried about it. But anyhow, yeah, acid rain, it could damage your hair, it could damage soil, wildlife, etc. It's not good. Okay, so maybe you could think like, do you guys have acid rain in your country or in your city? I don't know. Let's take a look, guys, at biodegradable. Now, degradable means break down, right? It can be broken down. Bio is, of course, short for biology, right? Something that is living. So biodegradable means able to decay naturally and harmlessly, right? So biodegradable packaging helps to limit the amount of harmful chemicals released into the atmosphere. So if we think about biodegradable packaging, that would be packaging using paper, for example, right? Paper is not containing harmful chemicals. If you throw paper away, it's okay, right? But plastic, of course, plastic is not biodegradable. I think plastic takes like thousands of years to break down. So anyhow, that's all biodegradable means. If something is biodegradable, it can break down and return to the earth kind of naturally and harmlessly without doing any harm. If it's not biodegradable, like plastic products, if you throw it away in in the wrong place, if you don't recycle it, it can cause a lot of trouble. And I talked about this example last week, but a good example of this would be plastic straws. Plastic straws are not biodegradable. If we throw them away, sometimes it ends up in the ocean. Fish eat them, whales accidentally consume them, dolphins, etc., and it causes a lot of harm to them, right? And that's why we don't use plastic spoons and straws or knives or whatever anymore. We're trying to use paper ones instead. Okay, let's move on, guys. Biodiversity. Biodiversity just means the number and variety of plant and animal species that exist in a particular environment, area, or in the world generally, or the problem of preserving and protecting this. A new national biological survey to protect species, habitat, and biodiversity. Oh my God, that's a hard example. But basically, biodiversity means how diverse is the environment in your area, right? If you said, where I live, there is a lot of biodiversity, it would mean there's a lot of different plants and trees and animals, right? If you said, where I live, there is not a lot of biodiversity, it means maybe the environment around where you live is not very good, right? Maybe there are problems with the environment and pollution. There are not many types of animals, not many types of trees or whatever, right? I think a lot of us know out there that probably the area with the greatest amount of biodiversity is in South America. And what am I talking about? Of course, I'm talking about the Amazon rainforest. I think the Amazon rainforest has the greatest amount of biodiversity, right? So many different types of trees and plants and animals. It just really scares me. I don't want to go there. Although I heard there's those pink dolphins or river dolphins that live in the river, the Amazon River. And I thought that's kind of cool. But anyhow, a lot of biodiversity in Amazon, actually so much that it kind of scares me because I always imagine if I go there that a snake is going to kill me or a jaguar or something. Anyhow. All right, guys, moving on. We have two different kinds of poisonous polluted gas. We have carbon monoxide, which is the poisonous gas formed by the burning of carbon, especially in the form of car fuel. So when you're driving a car, it creates carbon monoxide. That's not good. But we also have carbon dioxide, which is the gas formed when carbon is burned or when people or animals breathe out. I think we all know what carbon dioxide is. Anyhow, both of those ones, guys, a little bit too scientific. I would kind of skip those ones. Don't worry about it. Let's move on to the next one, which is climate. Climate is obviously a very useful word. We talk about the climate all the time, the climate in my area, the climate in your area. Of course, the climate just refers to the general weather conditions usually found in a particular place. I could tell you guys that the climate in my hometown is very wet. There's a lot of rain, and the climate in wintertime is quite cold. I think generally in January and February, the average temperature is about -20. And when I was a kid, I think the coldest day we experienced was -44. So yeah, the climate in my hometown in the winter, generally really cold, but throughout the year, it's very wet. I'd say in an average week, you get 4 days of rain. 4 or 5 days on average. So if you don't like rain, don't go to my hometown. But also Vancouver. Vancouver is a pretty rainy city. Actually, a lot of people don't know this, but if you think about London in the United Kingdom, London is often referred to being a very rainy city. It's often overcast. It's very dark, lots of clouds. But I was talking to a British guy in my apartment building, and he told me, yeah, London's a rainy city, but actually Vancouver gets much more rain than London does. So yeah, Vancouver is a really, really wet, rainy city. However, right now it's not too bad, pretty sunny here. But actually, I don't really like it. I don't like sunny weather so much. Anyhow, but the example we had here was the Mediterranean climate is good for growing citrus fruits and grapes. I guess that's why people in Mediterranean countries drink so much wine, right? So Mediterranean, of course, is referring to the Mediterranean Sea. So the Mediterranean climate exists in countries like southern France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Turkey, and North African countries like Libya, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow. All right, guys, next term is an important one. This is a really important term because this is something that people talk a lot about these days, and that is climate change or global climate change. Dun, dun, dun. So, of course, there has been a growing concern about climate change. It's a good example, right? Everybody is becoming more and more concerned about climate change. Now, I have a lot of friends in Japan and Korea, and they tell me that they truly believe that climate change is a real thing, and I agree with them. Because they say, especially in the case of Korea, a lot of my Korean friends have told me that the spring and fall seasons are getting shorter. And it seems like the summer and winters are getting, well, I think they mainly just said that summer is getting longer. Maybe not winter, but summer is getting longer. And it's getting even hotter than it was before. And Korea, actually in the summer, is already a pretty hot country and very, very humid. So yeah, actually I didn't really like summer in Korea because it was just too hot and humid. So I don't know, I'd always go to like a bank or some place to cool off because banks had really good air conditioning. Thank you, Ulinara. Ulinara? No, sorry. Uli Unhang. That was my bank in Korea. Best bank in the world. Anyhow, but climate change. Yeah, it's a very hot topic, right? Lots of politicians, lots of scientists, and regular people are talking about climate change and how can we slow down climate change, right? Let's not use plastic straws, right? Because that damages the environment. Does that contribute to climate change? Probably a little bit. Or, try not to use so many electronic goods while you're at home, right? Don't stress out the electrical system. Don't buy products that damage the environment, right? Long time ago, when I was a kid, it was okay to use hairspray, right? People would spray their hair with some stuff, some gel or whatever. But of course, that's not good for the environment because that stuff goes up into the air and damages the ozone layer. So now those things are kind of illegal. Anyhow, next term we have here, guys, is deforestation, which is kind of connected to climate change. Now, forestation is referring, of course, to forests. Deforestation means reduction in the amount of forest. So that just means the cutting down of trees in a large area, the destruction of forests by people. Now, this is a big topic, especially in Brazil. So if you're Brazilian or South American, you probably know all about this because that's a big topic, especially in South America, but around the world, is the deforestation of the Amazon, right? So I think the president of Brazil, unfortunately, is allowing companies to cut down more trees in Brazil's Amazon and then use that new land for cattle ranches, for cows, right? Now, that's a good thing if you like beef, right? I like beef. You probably like beef. More beef, cheaper prices. Hey, not too bad. But the Amazon is such an important biodiverse area, and it's really important that we protect it. So on one hand, cheaper beef, that's good. But on the other hand, it's damaging the environment, right? So that's also not good. But deforestation is destroying large areas of tropical rainforest. That's true whether it's in South America or Indonesia. Deforestation is a big problem. But I have kind of a different view of this because my hometown, the main industry was the logging industry, like cutting down trees, turning it into lumber or wood for building houses or paper and this kind of stuff. So how can I say this? This will make me sound bad. In Vancouver, there are many people who are very concerned about the environment. And usually people who are concerned about the environment, we say they are environmentally conscience. That looks really weird, but you know, that is correct. No, I think I spelled that wrong. Sorry guys, I made a mistake. I'm having a brain fart right now. Dun, 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 dun. Environmentally, there we go, environmentally conscious. And this should actually be conscious. If you are environmentally conscious, it means you're the kind of person that is thinking about the environment and concerned about it, right? I am concerned about the environment too. However, people in my hometown, the main job is cutting down trees. Canada, we have a lot of trees. And the good thing is, after they cut down the trees in one area, the next summer or 2 years later, tree planters will go there and plant new trees. And it will grow back after about 10 or 20 years. Seems like a long time, but it's actually not too bad. So in Vancouver, for example, when I go to the bathroom and when I want to dry my hands, I prefer to use paper, right? And not use an electric hand dryer because the paper is just faster, right? But I remember explaining this to a coworker who was a very environmentally conscious person, and she said, you know, that's not a good thing to do, Alan. You should try to use the electric one because you don't want to destroy the forest. And I thought, like, well, actually, I kind of do because it makes money for people in my hometown. But anyhow, I don't want to destroy the forest, but whatever. Okay, blip, going off topic. Let's look at the next sheet, guys. So on the back side here, we have desertification. Not desertification, desertification. Oh my God. Now, desertification is not referring to dessert, you know, dessert after dinner, right? That would be delicious, right? Desertification, we're talking about pies and ice cream and all that kind of stuff. That's a delicious topic. Unfortunately, this topic is not delicious. Desertification is referring to the process by which land changes into desert, right? So of course, this is happening in northern Africa around the Sahara Desert. Every year, the Sahara Desert is getting bigger and bigger. I think because people are damaging the environment and cutting down trees. So in that case, those two are connected. And also, I believe the Gobi Desert, Gobi or Gobi, the Chinese desert in China, that very large one. And I know in Asia, actually, that's a huge, huge problem because if that desert gets bigger, I know every year there are huge sandstorms. And then those storms pick up pollution and metals and all this dirty stuff. And it creates this kind of yellow cloud that goes up through China and then kind of hits Korea and Japan. And I actually saw that when I was in Korea. Yellow dust is how we refer to it in English. Yeah, I think it was in maybe April or early May when that happened in Korea when I was living there. And before it happened, I wasn't really concerned about it. I was like, you know, whatever. And then it happened, and I remember the first day, like, seeing this kind of yellow haze in the city, and I thought, oh my God, this is really bad. So desertification is a big problem. Expanding deserts is a big, big problem. And it's usually linked to deforestation. Those two tend to be linked together. Anyhow, guys, next term we have here is disposable products. Disposable products are products that can be thrown away. They can be disposed. So it describes an item that is intended to be thrown away after use. So for example, disposable nappies. That's very British. Nappies is the British term for diapers. So if you have a baby or your friend has a baby or whatever, you know that you use so many diapers, right? And of course, that's not really good for the environment that we're using disposable diapers, right? But I have a cousin who is a hippie. And maybe you guys know what a hippie is. A hippie is like a kind of peace-loving, environmentally conscious person. And she decided with her child she was not going to use disposable diapers. Instead, she used cotton diapers. And the problem with that, of course, is you need to clean them every time after your baby pees and poops, right? So that is a lot of work. So yeah, I thought she was insane. But she did it. She actually used cotton diapers. She never used any disposable diapers, so she didn't damage the environment. Good for her. But my wife and I think we're just too lazy. We're just gonna use regular disposable diapers because we don't wanna be doing laundry all day. We're already busy enough. So anyhow, moving on, guys. Next term here is a big environmental problem called drought. A drought is a period of time where there is no rain. There is a lack of moisture. It says a long period when there is little or no rain. Drought is a big problem because drought is connected or leads to something called famine. And famine is a lack of food. So if there is a drought, if it's really, really dry, farmers can't grow their crops. If they don't grow their crops, there will be a famine, and that means a lack of food, and then people will starve to death, right? So drought leads to famine. Famine leads to starvation. So this is a big problem. This happens in countries in Africa, countries that are maybe very, very hot and they're not getting a lot of rain and they don't have a lot of rivers, etc. They maybe have a drought. The farmers can't grow crops, so there is a famine, there is a severe lack of food, and that leads to starvation. People who are dying from hunger. To die from hunger. And that's really, really sad because in the countries you guys are in, I'm pretty sure whether you're in Brazil, Chile, Mexico, Canada, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, etc., you guys probably don't have a problem with droughts, and you probably don't have a problem with famine and starvation, but some places around the world do. Anyhow, guys, next term we have is earthquake. I think everybody knows earthquake. That's when the earth is shaking, a sudden violent movement of the earth's surface, sometimes causing great damage, right? A lot of people are probably familiar with the Ring of Fire. So around the Pacific, up into Asia, of course, Japan gets a lot of earthquakes, but that also comes upwards around Alaska and the west coast of the United States and Canada and the west coast of South America, Peru, Mexico, Chile, etc. So yeah, earthquakes don't just happen in Japan. They can also happen over here. And a lot of climate and environmental scientists believe that, Vancouver is going to have an earthquake at some point. We haven't had a major earthquake for a long time. We had an earthquake about 3 years ago, though. 3 or 4 years ago. It was pretty small. It was about 4.2, but it was pretty shocking. But anyhow, there's a prediction that in Vancouver we will have a very large earthquake that will destroy the city, and there's nothing we can do about it. Sounds kind of scary, but they said it could happen anytime between now and the next 500 years. So it's like, when is it going to happen? I don't know, right? Okay, guys, after earthquake, we have endangered species. Finally, we're getting back to something that I had written down earlier, right? Endangered species means an endangered bird, plant, or species of animals or plants which may soon not exist because there are very few now alive. So it means that this animal, plant, whatever it is, there are still some of them, but not many of them, and they could all be dead soon, right? So that is related to the term further down here, extinction, which means many species of plants and animals are in danger or threatened with extinction, equals being destroyed so they no longer exist. If something is extinct, they're all gone. They're all dead, like I had said earlier, right? So we know that around the world there are many endangered species, such as maybe tigers, right? The number of tigers around the world is constantly decreasing, right? I believe there used to be tigers in the Middle East. Or is that lions? Maybe both. But now there are no lions or tigers in the Middle East. And I think tigers are mostly just in India, but their number is decreasing, right? And there are also lots of plants and different species of environmental things that are in danger. So let's see here. Let's move on, guys, to energy. We all know what energy is. Energy is created by power plants, right, that maybe burn oil or gas, but could also be a nuclear power plant or a hydroelectric dam, whatever it is. So it says the power from something such as electricity or oil, which can do work, such as providing heat and light. There are different types of energy: solar, nuclear, hydroelectric, coal, oil, natural gas, etc., right? Okay. Anyhow, guys, the energy generated by the windmill drives all the drainage pumps. Wow, boring example. But we already know what energy is. When we're talking about ourselves and the energy that we need, we get energy from food, of course, right? We get energy from bread or rice and meat and vegetables, etc., right? But we're talking about energy for keeping the lights on, creating heat, powering our computer, etc. That is coming from, maybe solar energy, probably not likely, but solar or hydroelectric. In Vancouver, all the energy is coming from hydroelectric dams, so all the energy here is actually clean. So we're very lucky that we have a lot of rivers here. Anyhow, guys, after this we have energy conservation. Energy conservation just means conserving energy, trying not to use it too much. Kind of a boring term. Moving on, we have environment. We're fine. We're going to skip that. We already talked about extinction, so skip that one and move on to flood. A flood is referring to an environmental problem. It is kind of the opposite of a drought. Drought is lack of rain, right? Not enough rain, not enough moisture, which leads to famine, which leads to starvation. But a flood is maybe too much rain. It fills up the rivers, and then the rivers spill over onto the land and damage, farms or buildings or whatever. So it says, a large amount of water covering an area that is usually dry. My hometown sometimes has floods. There are lots of rivers around my hometown. In the winter, if there was too much snow, and if the snow melts very, very quickly, it will go into the rivers and there will be a flood. Also, if it's raining at the same time as well. So when I was a kid, this happened maybe twice, where we had to get sandbags and build kind of a wall around our house to protect our house from floods. At the time, actually, it seemed like a lot of fun. It was like, kind of like a special project, let's protect our house. But actually, it's not actually fun for adults. Anyhow, guys, next term we have here is fumes. Fume and fumes is like kind of gas or smoke, right? If somebody's smoking a cigarette, there are fumes coming out of the cigarette. Or if somebody's driving a car, there are fumes coming out of the car. So it says a strong, unpleasant, and sometimes dangerous gas or smoke. Petrol fumes always make me feel ill. So if you smell or see fumes coming from burning oil, it smells kind of bad, right? And that's what fume is. But anyhow, moving on, next term is actually quite useful. We use this a lot, especially in Canada. Natural resources. Natural resources are resources that we can take from the environment. So those are things such as minerals, forests, coal, oil, gas, etc., which exist in a place and can be used by people. So some countries have a lot of natural resources, such as Canada. We have a lot of natural resources. We have a lot of minerals: gold, silver, iron, copper, bronze, blah, 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 blah. We have a lot of minerals in Canada that are mined. We also have a lot of oil and gas, especially in Alberta. A lot of scientists actually predict that Canada has the second largest amount of oil in the world, although the oil is harder to get than in many countries. But anyhow, Canada has a lot of oil. We have a lot of trees in Canada. We have massive, massive forests. So Canada and lots of rivers. So Canada actually has a lot of natural resources. I think a lot of people don't know this, but I think it's about 25%, 20 or 25% of the world's fresh water is in Canadian lakes and rivers. Canada has so much clean, fresh water. So I always think it's weird when people are drinking Evian. Evian water tastes pretty good, actually. And as you know, Evian water actually comes from France. But it doesn't really make sense in Canada to drink French water, right? Because, of course, France is an old country, kind of polluted. You know, we have cleaner water than they do. Why don't you just drink Canadian water? Anyhow, just joking, kind of. Now, lots of other countries around the world, though, especially maybe if you're living in Asia, if you're living in Korea or Japan, you guys don't have a lot of natural resources. Maybe you guys did in the past, but of course, you know, you guys are old cultures, old civilizations. Maybe you use them up, right? So I remember my Korean friend always saying, hey, you know, in Canada, you guys are so lucky you have a lot of natural resources. It's true. We are very lucky. However, you could also think of countries that have a lot of natural resources and are not doing very well. Actually, lots of countries that have lots of natural resources are usually kind of poor countries. Think about Russia, lots of resources, not doing very well. Think about Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia is doing okay, but it's probably not a country you want to live in. Think about many countries in Africa. They also have lots of natural resources, but they're not using them effectively, and it usually leads to corruption, and it usually leads to something called a resource trap. If you're Brazilian and you're watching this, you guys too, you guys have so many resources in Brazil, but unfortunately it usually leads to a form of corruption, and this doesn't actually help the country very much. But anyhow, let's move on, guys. Next term we have here is global warming. Global warming and climate change are basically the same thing. They can be used interchangeably like would and used to usually can, although there is a difference. When we're talking about climate change, we're talking about how the climate is just changing, right? And it's not always about the climate getting hotter, right? But global warming is just talking about the warming of the planet or how the planet is getting hotter, right? So global warming here says a gradual increase in world temperatures caused by polluting gases such as carbon dioxide, which are collecting in the air around the Earth and preventing heat escaping into space. So global warming is more specifically just about how, you know, pollution and gas is trapped in our atmosphere and is causing the world to heat up, so it's connected to climate change because this is leading to climates changing, right? And I think a lot of climate scientists believe that the world has maybe on average the temperature around the world has increased by 2 degrees. And people think, wow, well that's not a really big change, but you know, even small changes in temperature can cause lots of big problems, right? So everybody is concerned about global warming. And then the next term we have here is greenhouse effect. Okay, anyhow, greenhouse effect is an increase in the amount of carbon dioxide and other gases in the atmosphere, which is believed to be the cause of global warming of the surface of the Earth. So the greenhouse effect leads to global warming, which leads to global climate change. So the three are kind of connected, right? Anyhow, next term we should look at, guys, is a term here called Greenpeace. Greenpeace is actually referring to an organization that fights for the protection of the environment. So if you are part, or if you are concerned about the environment, if you're an environmentally conscious person, maybe you want to join Greenpeace because you want to be part of an organization that tries to fight and protect, well, fight for the climate and protect the climate, right? So that is Greenpeace. I think my friend was a Greenpeace member quite a few years ago. Anyhow, guys, the next term is good, renewable energy. Now, we can say renewable. Now, renew means, you know, it can be used again and again and again, right? It's not a resource that you can just use one time. You can use it multiple times. Renewable energy, or you could say, green energy is another way of saying it. I prefer to say green energy, but anyhow, a renewable Energy refers to or describes a form of energy that can be produced as quickly as it is used. So we're talking about like wind energy or solar energy or wave power. So renewable energy sources such as wind and wave power, right? Canada doesn't have a lot of windmills, but it really should. I think I've seen windmills in Japan and Korea. I think in Korea I saw them in, what is the name of the province? So from Seoul, I went to Sokcho and Soraksan and Gyeongpode. And that province, Gyeongsan-do? I could be wrong. Anyhow, I saw a lot of windmills around there, and I was impressed. I thought that's really cool, making electricity from a renewable source. That is green energy. That's awesome, right? Solar power in Canada doesn't really make too much sense either, unfortunately, especially in British Columbia or in Vancouver, because we don't get a lot of sun, so we don't have a lot of solar power. But hydroelectricity, yes. We have many, many rivers in British Columbia, so we have a lot of dams, so we have a lot of hydroelectricity, electricity coming from water, and that is another form of green energy, so good for us. Okay, next term, guys, oil slick. We're gonna skip this one, not very useful. Ozone layer is kind of useful. It's kind of a scientific term. You guys already know what this is in your language, but, I think we're gonna take a break soon, but really quick, a layer of air high above the earth, which contains a lot of ozone, not ozone, right? It looks like an Italian word, but it isn't. Anyhow, it protects or prevents harmful ultraviolet light from the sun from reaching the earth, right? So the ozone layer is kind of that protective layer around the earth, right? So you guys probably know that there are lots of scientists that say there are holes in the ozone layer, so that lets through more sun, which causes more damage, especially around Antarctica. It's melting the polar ice caps, which is really, really dangerous, right? So yeah, we have to stop the ozone layer from being damaged. And that's one of the reasons why we don't use hairsprays so much anymore, because they're bad for the ozone layer. But I always think the word ozone is kind of funny because it looks like an Italian word to me. Ozone, right? Looks like some kind of delicious pasta dish. Anyhow, last term we have on this sheet, guys, is, wow, we went through a lot here. Pollution. We already know what pollution is, but they say here pollution is damage caused to water or air by harmful substances or waste. When I hear the word pollution, I usually think of, dirty clouds in the air, and I say, oh, it's very polluted today, or there's a lot of pollution in the air. In Vancouver, again, we don't get a lot of pollution, but we all know that China, of course, has a lot of manufacturing, a lot of factories, so China creates a lot of pollution, right? Maybe your country does too. Canada does as well, not very much in British Columbia though. And yeah, the yellow dust that hits Japan and Korea, it also goes up over into the wind stream, and it does come over to Alaska and British Columbia and all the way as far south as California. It's kind of interesting, but about 5-10 years ago in the summer, people used to see like kind of pollution in my hometown, and they were wondering like, where is this pollution coming from? Because it's not coming from my hometown. And so actually they discovered that the pollution is coming from the yellow dust all the way from China. So yeah, that yellow dust from China caused by pollution and desertification, bleh, is a huge, global issue because it's impacting not just China, but also South Korea, Japan, the United States, and Canada as well. So anyhow, guys, but I think what we're going to do here, guys, is we are going to stop and take a 10-minute break. When we come back, we'll go through the rest of this vocab here, and then we will talk about your assignment for this week, and maybe I will provide you guys with a model. So, okay, I will see you again in 10 minutes. PST. We are in our third class now. We are going to be continuing with the vocabulary, right? And then taking a look at your assignment. So, guys, take a look at the last sheet for the vocabulary. We just talked about pollution, right? Which obviously is a really useful word, especially for this week's topic. Next term we have here is recycle waste. Now, just recycle by itself is a useful term. I think a lot of you guys already know what recycle means, but recycle waste means to collect and treat rubbish or garbage to produce useful materials which can be used again. So that's why, of course, we recycle plastic bottles or glass bottles, right? And I'm sure you guys all do this in your home country. If you're consuming something coming from a plastic bottle, you recycle it and you put it in the right garbage bin, right? So it can be recycled. Recycling is kind of an interesting topic in Canada in a certain way because, how can I say, for most apartment buildings in Vancouver, for example, especially if they're older apartment buildings, recycling is not mandatory. It's voluntary. But if you live in a newer building, it is mandatory. So that brings up these two words, mandatory versus voluntary, right? They're the opposites of each other. Voluntary. Mandatory, if we say something is mandatory, recycling is mandatory, for example, the meaning of that is something you must do. You have to do this, right? Whereas if something is voluntary, it's something you can choose. You can choose to do. So I know in countries like Japan and Korea, recycling is mandatory. You have to do this. But in a lot of places in Canada still, recycling is voluntary. It's your choice. But these days there's a lot of peer pressure or pressure from society to make sure that you recycle. So even though it's voluntary in Canada, it's kind of becoming mandatory. And if you move into an apartment building that is or has been built in the past 10 or 15 years, recycling is mandatory. But my apartment building that I live in with my family is a little bit older, not a little bit older. It was built, I believe, in the early 1980s. Oh my God, right? So recycling in my building is actually voluntary, and about 2 years ago, they requested that everybody recycle their organic garbage. Organic garbage meaning like old vegetables, coffee grounds, eggshells, that kind of stuff. And everybody was doing it for a while, but the one problem, of course, is when you recycle it, like when you open up the bin to put your stuff in, it smells really bad and it would attract a lot of flies, so it was kind of disgusting. So for the first 2 weeks, I believe everybody in my building was trying to recycle their organic garbage, but after a while it became less and less because it was kind of a pain to do it and it smelled really bad. But I don't know in your country, maybe you guys recycle everything, glass, plastic, electronics, organic garbage, I'm not sure. But yeah, recycling, of course, is a good thing. It does help the environment. Anyhow, next term we have here is sustainable development. This is also a really, really big topic. Sustainability is a big global topic. And sustainable development means developing an area but making it sustainable. So it means a development that is causing little or no damage to the environment and therefore able to continue for a long time. The example here is a large international meeting was held with the aim of promoting sustainable development in all countries, right? So sustainable development is actually really hard to achieve, but if you built a house using recyclable products in the forest and you use solar energy for electricity and this kind of stuff, you would have a sustainable house, and that would be part of sustainable development. But yeah, this is a big topic all around the world. Many countries are talking about sustainability. How can we develop but still protect our environment and not do any damage, or at least very, very little? Next term we have here is tsunami. Tsunami is obviously a kind of natural disaster, just like drought, just like an earthquake, right? Tsunami is, of course, another one. Now, tsunami is listed here because tsunami is a word that we use in English, but of course this is borrowed from Japanese because the original word is Japanese, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing. But a tsunami, of course, is an extremely large wave caused by a movement of the earth under the sea, often caused by an earthquake, right? So I think, unfortunately, a lot of us remember, I think it was in 2011, that large earthquake and then tsunami that occurred in Japan, especially hitting Fukushima prefecture, and that was really, really terrible. Or there was that very large tsunami around Indonesia, Malaysia, that was about 15 years ago, I believe, that caused a lot of damage, and that was really awful. Anyhow, so tsunami, just another natural disaster. Let's move on to next one. Unleaded petrol. Just skip this one. That one's not useful. Petrol is a little bit useful. Petrol is the British term for oil and gas. We don't use the term petrol in Canada and America, or we use it very, very little. Just use oil or gas if you're talking about those products in Canada and America. Next term we have here is use up natural resources. To use something up means to use something until it's gone, right? Use up natural resources means the degradation of natural resources because of human pressure, because humans are getting too many minerals or using too much wood or something like that, right? So of course in Canada, like I said before, we have a lot of natural resources. We have a lot of minerals, oil, forests, water, etc. We use up our natural resources, but Canada, we're very lucky. We're a large country. It's not a big issue here, but this is a big issue in smaller countries with large populations. After this, we have volcano. Volcano is another kind of natural disaster, right? Like drought, tsunami, or earthquake. A volcano is something that usually kids are interested in because it looks cool. At least I was when I was a kid. But of course, a volcano is a mountain with a large circular hole at the top through which lava, and lava is that very hot liquid rock, gases, steam, and dust are or have been forced out before. So erupting volcanoes discharge massive quantities of dust into the stratosphere. And the stratosphere is similar to the atmosphere, right? I'm trying to think of a good example of a volcano. There are some volcanoes in British Columbia, but they aren't active. Volcano. Okay, well, we all know that there's volcanoes around Japan or in Japan. There's also a very large volcano in the United States in a very famous park called Yellowstone Park. I think it's called actually, I can't remember the name. Sorry, guys. But yeah, volcanoes can be really, really deadly when they erupt, right? And anyhow, last term we have here, guys, is waste. Waste, of course, is a useful term. Waste is unwanted matter or material, basically garbage or trash, often that which is left after useful substances or parts have been removed. So yeah, it lists the other terms you can use here: rubbish, garbage, trash. In North American English, we will more often use the terms garbage, secondly, trash. We do sometimes use the term rubbish and waste, but we'll usually use garbage or trash. Waste we will more often use as the verb, right? Don't waste time. I wasted my afternoon playing games. I wasted time watching Netflix, right? I wasted something, right? But usually it's used when we talk about not spending time effectively or efficiently, right? But yeah, waste also just means garbage. Okay, guys, so we went over all that vocabulary. We're finally done. I know that might have been kind of boring. I didn't skip too many of them, so a lot of the terms there can be used, although they are kind of tough. Try your best and try to use them in your writing for this week's assignment. That would be a really, really excellent idea. So what we should do, though, is move on and talk about your weekly assignment here, or your assignment due on Wednesday. So let's take a look, guys. Please take a look at this sheet here. It says Global College Assignment, Endangered Species. Now, this assignment was actually supposed to be done in April, but we didn't have it in April, so that's why it's referring to April here. But it says April 22nd is Earth Day, yay, which is a day to show support for protecting the environment. As such, you will take part in an assignment related to this day. Namely, you will be researching an endangered or extinct animal species from your own country, if possible. So what you guys need to do, first off, if you need to think of an endangered or extinct species of animal in your country. If you can't find one that you like in your country, it's okay to write about an animal species that's endangered or extinct from another country. That's really okay. This is a research assignment. This is important for you because when most students use the internet, they do so in their own language. So this is your opportunity to use the internet from start to finish in English. Challenge yourself. So this is another important point. You're going to have to do research here about this endangered or extinct animal. And we would ask you guys to please do your research in English only, right? So if you're going to be talking about, I don't know, penguins. I think penguins are okay. But imagine you're going to be writing about penguins as an endangered species. Please do your research in English, right? Go to Google. Type in penguins or type in endangered penguins and do your research in English, right? So it says the grammar focus this week will be how to use the term used to and would. And you are also encouraged to use a range of adjectives and adverbs to describe your chosen creature. Your task is to write a speech about an endangered animal using used to and would and other descriptive language features. Some topics you can talk about are what the animal looks like, the animal's natural habitat, the animal's lifestyle, their diet, their migration, their culture, or whatever, why the animal is endangered or extinct, and if there are any conservation efforts being made for the animal, and lastly, how can we help the situation? So there's a lot of different things you could write about in your body paragraphs here. So it says here, you should write 4 to 5 paragraphs and include a minimum of 5 of the vocabulary or idioms expressions that you learned on Monday. Please remember to use transitional phrases of agreement and contrast to make your writing flow more smoothly. These include terms like likewise, in addition, furthermore, however, although, despite that, etc. Now, of course, like usual, your assignment is due before class on Wednesday, so try your best and have fun. Okay. All right, guys, so that's a lot of information, but basically your first step is to think about your home country and think, what animals in my home country are endangered or extinct? Pick an animal species that you like or that you are interested in, right? Then you're going to hopefully write, I would recommend 5 paragraphs, right? An introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Now, my recommendation for this one is first have your introduction, then with your first body paragraph, talk about what the animal is. What does it look like? What is its natural habitat? And maybe what is its lifestyle? Second paragraph, talk about why the animal is endangered. What happened to this animal? Why is it endangered or why is it extinct? And maybe after that, in the third paragraph, talk about any kind of conservation efforts being made to protect the animal And lastly, maybe how individual people can help protect this animal, and then you should be good. And of course, your last paragraph will be the conclusion, right? Okay, so that's just my idea of how you could approach this here, right? Intro, paragraph 1, talk about the animal, what it looks like, what its diet's like, where does it live, what's its habitat, etc. Second paragraph, talk about why is this animal endangered, what's happened, or why is this animal extinct, what happened, what led to the death of this animal species. Third paragraph, talk about what maybe scientists are doing to try to protect this animal, or talk about what we can do as people to protect this animal, right? And then lastly, some kind of conclusion. All right, guys, now I would like to give you guys kind of a quick model. Now, another thing you have to keep in mind when you're using this is try to use some descriptive terms. So we didn't take a look at this, but please take a quick look at this here, animal body parts, because you might want to use this when you are describing the animal, right? So whether it's an elephant or tiger or whatever. So you guys can see there are terms like trunk or tusk for an elephant, whiskers for a tiger or cheetah or whatever kind of cat, tail, horns, mane, wing, feather, fangs, etc., etc., etc. A lot of these terms will be useful when you are describing the animal. But later, when you're talking about why the animal no longer exists or why the animal is endangered, you might want to refer to the vocabulary that we looked at when we talked about the environment. Okay, so anyhow, guys, let me provide you guys with a quick intro. I might not complete all the paragraphs here, but I want to give you guys an example. So, now I did think about which animal I would like to write about. Of course, I have to think about this from a Canadian context, right? What animals in Canada are extinct or endangered? Now, first off, do you guys know of any animals that are endangered or extinct in Canada? Does anybody have an answer? Okay, nobody has an answer right now. That's okay. What I would like to talk about are polar bears. Now, you guys know polar bears. You probably think they look really cute. The polar bear cubs, the baby polar bears, yeah, they're pretty cute little guys, right? You probably want to play a game with them. But, of course, yeah, actual polar bears are the largest types of bears in the world. And they're pretty scary because if you do see them, it must be because you're living far up north. And they're completely white, so it's hard to see them because, you know, everything's white up north because of snow. And they're very good hunters, and they're very violent. But anyhow, so you want to start with your introduction first, right? Now, for my introduction, I would say like this, something like this. For my assignment, I have chosen to write about polar bears. Now, you probably need to think first off, is this animal endangered or extinct? Of course, in Canada's case, polar bears are still alive, but their number is decreasing, so they are endangered, not extinct. Polar bears are an endangered animal in Canada. So remember, this is just a quick introduction. Now, something you can do in your introduction is explain what you're going to be talking about or what you're going to be writing about in your body paragraphs. So maybe I would say here, we will, now actually we could say a lot of times when we're writing, university level papers, we say we, even though it's just you writing, but this case is not a university paper. I'm going to say, I will write about and describe polar bears, write about why they are endangered, and lastly, write about what we can do to protect polar bears. And period. That's good enough for an introduction. Just 2-3 sentences, right? So let's think about this, guys, for my intro. With an intro, you want to keep it short, right? So for my assignment, I have chosen to write about polar bears. Polar bears, and then I have to explain whether it's endangered or extinct. Polar bears are an endangered animal in Canada. I'll write about and describe polar bears. So this is kind of talking about the first body paragraph. Write about why they are endangered. This is explaining what I'm going to be talking about in my second body paragraph. And lastly, write about what we can do to protect polar bears. And this is writing about my third body paragraph, right? And that's a really good way to approach a writing assignment, whether it's, 5 paragraphs or more. You kind of give an introduction and say how you're going to organize this paper, this assignment, this essay, right? You don't have to do this, but it helps the reader understand how you're going to approach this, right? And that's good enough. So after this, of course, we're going to have our first body paragraph. So in our first body paragraph, yes, we are going to write about and describe polar bears, what they look like, where they live, what they eat, etc. So let me erase the introduction. I hope you guys were able to understand this, and I hope you guys copied this down or at least screen captured it. So let me erase here. Okay, so I'm feeling a little bit lazy today, so I'm not going to write down body paragraph 1. I'm going to write down BP1. Plus, it sounds kind of funny, right? BP1. Now, you want to try to remember to use some transitional phrases or something like that. So when you're starting your first body paragraph, a very simple way to start is just by writing, firstly, let's discuss polar bears in general. So now you want to describe polar bears, right? Polar bears are the largest bears in the world, and often weigh over 500 kilograms, right? Which is true. Polar bears are huge. Now let's think of some descriptive words for describing the body, right? Okay. They have massive, like very large, right? They have massive bodies, large paws with large claws, and small tails. Right? Polar bears do have tails. They're very, very small. They're kind of like a little button around their bum, right? but they have large paws. When we talk about animals, usually we don't say that animals have hands. Instead, we call them paws, right? And they have large claws. Claws are, how can you put it, like their fingernails, right? And they use the claws to rip at other animals, right? So, oh, and of course, I should mention, of course, they are completely white in color. Okay, so I think I've described polar bears fairly well. They're very large, 500 kilograms. They have massive bodies. When they stand up tall, they're really, really big. They got large paws, large claws. They got small tails. And of course, they are white, right? So talked about what they look like, and I described them. Maybe I also want to talk about where they live, right? What they eat. So, of course, they live far up north around the North Pole in northern Canada. Right? So that's where they live, right? We could also describe their diet. Their diet consists, like it's made up of, consists of, I think it's mostly fish, seals, sea lions, and other animals that live up north and can be hunted. Okay, and I'm going to end it there. Now, okay, let's think about this again. So, in my first body paragraph, I just wanted to briefly describe polar bears, talk about where they live, and talk about their diet, right? And I've accomplished that. So let's think about this again. So when you're starting the body paragraph 1, 2, or 3, you're going to start with like firstly, secondly, thirdly, right? Firstly, let's discuss polar bears in general. Polar bears are the largest bears in the world and often weigh over 500 kilograms. They have massive bodies, large paws with large claws, and small tails. Of course, they are completely white in color. They live far up north around the North Pole in northern Canada. Their diet consists of fish, seals, sea lions, and other animals that live up north and can be hunted. So I've covered the main things I wanted to cover. Now, I would recommend for you guys, this is a decent length. This is good. If you guys could do more research, because I didn't do a lot of research, I'm going to be honest, but you guys please do more research. Maybe try to describe in more detail than I have what your endangered or extinct animal looks like. Describe their diet in maybe more detail and talk about where they live maybe in more detail, right? But that's about good for me for the first paragraph. All right, so let's move on to paragraph 2, right? Now, also, an important thing here is I did talk about, I should mention this before I moved on, talked about claws and I talked about tails. And those terms, of course, were used to describe what a polar bear looks like, but they're also taken from this animal body parts sheet here. So that's 2 out of the 5 terms that I need to use, right? So I only need to use 3 more. So let's move on to body paragraph 2. So body paragraph 2, let's get started in an easy way just by starting with secondly. Secondly, let's take a look at why polar bears are endangered. Okay, now here is where you're definitely going to have to do some research, right? So for the animal that you have chosen, this endangered animal, you're going to have to do research and find out, why are they endangered? What happened to this species, right? Is it because of humans? Is it because of another species maybe hunting them? Is it because they're running out of food? Is it climate change? What is it, right? Okay, so polar bears, like I said before, I didn't do very much research, but I do basically know why polar bears are endangered. And I'm going to write here, the main reason why they are endangered is because of global climate change, or more specifically, global warming. Okay, guys, now I used two other terms that came from our environment vocabulary list, right? Those were global climate change, or just climate change, but also global warming, right? Of course. Okay. Both have led to the ice caps melting. And therefore, to a change in their environment and behavior. Due to this, polar bears cannot hunt and catch food as easily as they could in the past. Many are dying because of starvation. Okay, and I'm going to end it there. Honestly, this could be a bigger paragraph. I should do more research, find out more specifically why polar bears are endangered and in trouble. But I think this is a pretty good summary of why they are, right? So let's think about this paragraph again, right? We're starting with secondly, right, to get into our second paragraph. Then I'm saying, and then I'm giving them a quick summary of what we're going to be looking at. Secondly, let's take a look at why polar bears are endangered. The main reason why they are endangered is because of ding 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 global climate change, or more specifically ding 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 global warming. Both have led to the ice caps melting. So you guys probably know far up north in the North Pole, we call it the ice caps, those large chunks of ice, right? They have led to the ice caps melting, and therefore to a change in their environment and behavior. Due to this, polar bears cannot hunt and catch food as easily as they could in the past. Many are dying because of starvation. Now, actually, I know that this is true, right? We know global climate change is causing massive environmental changes around the world. Up north in Canada, there's not as much ice as there used to be, right? So this has actually led to many other animal groups dying. And so if they're dying, that will impact the polar bear. Or if their behavior changes and they go further up north, maybe the polar bears are not there, they can't find them, right? So their food source has been reduced. So some of them are literally starving to death. They are not getting enough food and they're dying, and it's very sad. Also though, and something I didn't mention here, because it's getting hotter, the polar bears that are not really super far north, the ones that are north but not as far north, the weather is becoming almost too hot for them. They're not used to warm or hot weather. They want to live in a very cold climate. So some of the polar bears are having to move either further up north, or very strangely, some of the polar bears are actually moving down south because they can't find any food up north. Now this has led to actually a really interesting phenomenon, because as these polar bears move south, they're moving into a little bit warmer areas with lots of forests. And they're finding other animals, of course, that they can hunt and eat, which is good, but they're also running into rival predators, like the grizzly bear. So if polar bears and grizzly bears meet, they will fight and try to kill each other. Usually the polar bear will win because the polar bear is much larger. And then also sometimes they'll get together and mate, and then they'll have a grizzly bear, which is really interesting. But anyhow, and yeah, if you've ever seen, like, of course, polar bears are huge, but grizzly bears are also really huge and super scary. I've run into grizzly bears twice in the forest up north around my hometown. It's an extremely scary situation to be in. But anyhow, so that's body paragraph 2, guys. Talked about why they're endangered, right? And that's important that you guys also do the same. But let's talk about body paragraph 3. So let me erase this here. Dum 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 dum. Now the third paragraph, you would definitely have to do some research for this. And again, I haven't, so I'm not sure that what I'm going to be writing about is completely accurate, but let's see how it goes. So thirdly, let's take a look at what scientists and environmentalists are doing to protect polar bears. Okay, so yeah, that's our main topic for the third body paragraph. But also later on, we should also write about what we can do as individuals to help this animal, to help polar bears, right? So, like I talked about in body paragraph 2, the main thing, or the main cause of polar bears being endangered is global climate change, right? So, global, what am I writing about? Scientists are trying to raise awareness of this issue, right? They're trying to raise awareness, make more people aware that polar bears are dying out, that they are endangered, right? They are encouraging people to be more conscious of the environment. And I'm going to write some more here. To recycle, to reuse, to not create pollution, etc. All right, so that makes sense. These are things that people can do. If we can do these things, now actually I should probably talk about what we can do individually. Individually, we should try to recycle, not create pollution. And actually, I want to try to use more terms from the sheet, so 1 second. Okay. Yeah. Use biodegradable products. Use less energy, etc. And then maybe I'll sum it up here. Basically, we should try to protect our environment better in order to help polar bears. Period. Okay. Now, guys, again, I actually did end up writing a fair amount here, didn't I? But I would like you guys to do more research, find out more useful things people can do to actually help the animals. I'm kind of writing more in general. These are just like general things we can do. But let's think about this again. So thirdly, and that's how you want to start your third body paragraph, let's take a look at what scientists and environmentalists are doing to protect polar bears. Scientists are trying to raise awareness of this issue. They're encouraging people to be more conscious of the environment, to recycle, to reuse, to not create pollution, etc. Individually, as people, we should try to recycle, not create pollution, use biodegradable products, use less energy, etc. Basically, we should try to protect our environment better in order to help polar bears, right? Okay, all right, so I finished my third paragraph. I'm done. The only thing I have left, of course, is my conclusion, right? Okay, so your conclusion, remember a conclusion is not very long, right? And a conclusion is kind of a quick summary of what you have written about, right? Now, an easy way to start a conclusion, and at a university level, a lot of professors don't like this, but if you're not writing for a professor, if you're not writing at a university level, it's okay to simply start with in conclusion, right? Comma, blah, blah, blah. In conclusion, polar bears are a majestic, and wonderful animal species in Canada that we should seek to protect. It would be very sad if polar bears went extinct. So let's try our best to take better care of the environment and thus polar bears. Okay guys, I kept it pretty short here because my wrist is kind of tired, feeling kind of lazy. But anyhow, in conclusion, polar bears are a majestic and wonderful animal species in Canada that we should seek to protect. That too looks really weird. It would be very sad if polar bears went extinct. So let's try our best to take better care of the environment and thus polar bears. Okay guys, and I'm done. Now, another thing you guys need to keep in mind, which I did not keep in mind, is when you're writing your paper, especially in body paragraph 1, when you are talking about this extinct animal or talking about this endangered animal, try to use used to or would, right? I didn't do that very much in my own writing, but try to keep that in mind. But also remember to use some of the vocabulary from the sheet that we didn't take a look at that describes animals, but also some of the vocabulary from the environment sheet, which I did use. Terms like pollution, biodegradable, recycle, environmentally conscious, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Try to use those terms, right? Now, you can write your paragraphs and your assignment any way you really want. But again, my suggestion is 5-paragraph style, introduction, body paragraph 1, 2, 3, conclusion. And in my case, for this writing, intro, talk about what the animal looks like, where they live, and maybe what their diet is, what do they eat. Body paragraph 2, talk about why they are endangered or extinct, what happened, why are they all dead, or why are they almost all dead. Third body paragraph, talk about what scientists are doing to help protect this animal, or talk about also, what you can do as an individual to protect this animal, and then quick conclusion at the end. And then you should have a pretty good 5-paragraph assignment on your hands that you will be able to submit on Wednesday before class starts. So good luck with that, guys. Like I said before though, take a look at these extra sheets that we didn't really look at in more detail. So animal body parts could be useful for describing them. We also have this sheet here. I didn't take a look at this. Let's reach for the stars together. We can save the world. Okay, lots of idioms here. She is so down to earth. This is really good. Damn, I should have looked at this with you guys, but we just don't have enough time. Maybe Melanie will take a look at this with you guys tomorrow. So yeah, Melanie will be with you guys tomorrow. You will be continuing with this topic of the environment and endangered animals. Hopefully it will be fun. And yeah, I wish you guys the best of luck with your writing. You guys will see me again on Friday when we will do some review of this week's grammar and vocabulary. And we will also do some speaking practice and then hopefully a fun elective activity. And we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I hope you guys watching. I wish you guys a good day, a good week, because I won't see you till Friday. And yeah, I did see some really good news this morning when I woke up. As usual, I was very tired when I woke up because my daughter woke up early at 6:30. I don't know why, because she usually wakes up at like 8:39. She woke up at 6:30, so I had to get up too and make breakfast for her. But oh yeah, no, the good news I saw, the good news I saw is I think Oxford University is getting close to developing a vaccine for the coronavirus. I think that's really awesome. I think they're ahead of all the other research teams that are looking at creating a vaccine. So maybe we're gonna get lucky. Maybe 3-6 months from now, maybe they will have developed an effective vaccine and then they will mass produce it, and this whole thing can be over and we can get back to normal, hopefully. Anyhow, guys, I hope you guys have a good week. I will see you on Friday. Have a good day. you